Hey everybody, Jason here. Gonna work on a little project today. It's November 30th, 2019. We're almost into December. Been working on this bay window bus that picked up a while ago, and some of the videos that I put up on the Wagons West slam kit, and that still have yet to drive the bus. I've been spending the rest of the summer been working on getting the motor kind of installed, tuned in. Had some issues with some dual carbs and tuning those, which was a pain in the butt, but finally got the motor in a spot where I feel like I'm in a good spot to run it. So I got the whole back end buttoned up. Been just kind of messing around with it, just here and there, not real committed to it, as I've been working on some other projects as well. So today I got a project I'm going to work on. I'm going to replace the master cylinder. I think in one of the videos I had mentioned that I was going to replace it at the time, and I just never got to it. So today I'm going to document replacing the master cylinder before I put the bus back on the ground. So right now I've got it up on jack stands, and I'll give you a quick tour of that here. But today I'll walk through what you're going to need and how to do it. I've got a new master cylinder in my hands, along with some new brake switches, and then we'll get under the bus and I'll show you kind of what needs to be done to replace the master cylinder. So we'll carry on and get ready to do that here in a moment, and we'll show you what we got going on as far as where the bus currently sits, what it looks like, and then we'll start up this project. So hope you watch. So here's the bus as it sits right now. She's off the ground. Got her up on jack stands. Motor is in. Feeling pretty good about that. Still need some fine tuning to get the carbs kind of dialed up, but I want to drive it. So we'll get to that after we get this thing back on the ground. But first we got to get these brakes. So what's happening with the brakes is I have to give it 3 pumps basically before the brakes firm up. So when I mounted this disc brake kit that's on here, I had adjusted the brakes and bled the brakes and got those what I thought was good to go, and then as it sat for a little bit, I'd go to put my foot on the brake, and it was definitely not working good. I'd have to give it basically 2.5 pumps and go from there. So we're gonna go ahead and give it a whirl and replace this master cylinder, because I either A, have air in the lines, or B, I need a master cylinder. So that's the route we're gonna go. So it is really cold here today. It is low 30s, and I'm just bored. It's Saturday after Thanksgiving, and I'm ready to get a project underway. So I hope you kind of follow along with this one. Should be a short video by the time we're done, but I'll show you what you need to do. So off to the new parts so you can see what the new parts look like. So to start this project, let me show you what we're going to need here. I ordered a new master cylinder, I don't know, a while back actually. Actually this one came with my kit when I got my disc brakes, and so I've got the master cylinder ready to go. Where I ran into a problem was actually ordering the brake switches, if you will. I guess it's the brake switch that wires to the wiring and mounts itself to the master cylinder, but the issue was more just me not really paying that close attention. So let me explain. So here's the new master cylinder, brand new out of the box. And here's my first problem. I ordered the brake switch, but when I ordered it, I don't know if you can see that. Let's open it up. I ordered a 2-prong switch. not correct for my application. So put that aside, maybe use it on another project. Today I just got in 2 new switches. Beck Arnley, never used them before. See how it goes. Don't know any reviews, but if I find out, I'll let you know. So let's open that guy up. This one is a 3-prong switch, which is correct for my bus application. This is a 69 bay window bus. Your application might be slightly different, but I think the steps to remove and install the master cylinder are going to be the same. So although you might have a different year bus, I know that as you get into, I believe it's 1970 and later, there's a brake booster on these bay window buses. But this application, I've done this before with Volkswagen Beetles as well as Carmen Ghia, and the process is for the most part the same, just the location of the master cylinder is in a different spot and such. Keep in mind that once you replace this master cylinder, you will absolutely 100% need to bleed the brakes. So call a friend. There's kits to do it by yourself. I bought a kit. I will not recommend it. It was horrible. I'll go back to the old-fashioned way of basically bleeding the brakes when it's time, and if I get to it, I'll record it, but if not, there's plenty of videos out there on YouTube that show you how to bleed the brakes, and it's not too big of a deal. So here we go, off to the next step. We'll get under the bus, I'll show you what we're replacing and where it's located, and we'll go from there. Alright, so we're at the bus. I've got the bus jacked up like I said before, and we're gonna get underneath the bus here. Let me show you. So right underneath the nose of the bus is located your master cylinder, right there. Okay, your 2 brake light switches are right here, and then you've got your brake lines that are running, one here, one on the back side, and another on the back side. I think those might be a little bit tricky, so I'm not really sure how I'm going to get to that yet. You've got 2 bolts, which look like, or I'm sorry, 2 nuts, and they're really hard to see right there. There you go, you can see that right there. These are one on each side, and they look like they're 13s. I'll let you know for a fact when I get in there. So those are going to have to come off to pull the master cylinder out. And you've got your reservoir that sits right on top, and I'm hoping that that will come out with it. Like I said, I've never done this project before on a bus, so we'll find out. So the plan is to unconnect or disconnect these. They just slide right off. You can just pull, slides right off. So we'll disconnect. I'm going to leave these on, and I'm going to actually put the new switches on before I mount the new master cylinder, and then I'm going to spend time undoing these hard brake lines. Might get a little messy because there is brake fluid in the lines, so we'll figure that out once we get to it. So that's the plan. Back to the garage where we will set up our new master cylinder. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to put the new brake switches on. So maybe I'll throw a little music behind this or something, but I can put a link in the description on the brake switches themselves. I literally just ordered them off of Amazon, so it wasn't too bad of a deal, and they're only like $7 a piece, maybe that, but here's the part number. And here we go. So enjoy. There's these little caps that are in here. I'm pulling out can see that those come out. Those are just to keep dirt out during transit. So, and then the brake switch itself just screws right in. Now, I'm not sure if I should put like some sort of like anti-seize or some sort of gasket stuff on here, but I've never needed to in the past, but I guess I'll find out if it starts leaking. So there's that. So I'm gonna put those on there, one on each side. (15/16) size wrench is what I was looking for there. Didn't know the size off the top of my head. So we're gonna basically screw this in, and then I'm gonna tighten it down using wrench. This is getting pretty tight, but it should be all the way down to where you can't move it anymore, because you don't want this leaking. And I'm pretty close on this one. Move on to the next. Now, one thing that I did with this brake switch that I didn't document, but before I installed this, I double checked to make sure it was the right fit on the plug underneath the bus. So it might be a good idea while you just have the switch in your hand to get underneath your vehicle, or however you're doing it, under a bus with your bug, whatever. It's easier on a bug because you have open access if you have the body off, but when you have the body on, it's a little tricky. But double check to make sure that you have the right switch before you start messing around with this, because you might be wasting your time like I did with the 2-prong switch. So I think we're pretty ready to move on here. Okay. Alright, so that's the master cylinder is ready to go. The next step that is going to happen here is we are going to get under the bus, and I'm going to start taking the old master cylinder out. Just one last thing here before we get to this. Make sure all these little plastic caps you see here are removed before you start to get into this project, because that will be frustrating if you're trying to screw your brake lines in and you got those caps in the way. These rubber grommets are going to stay in because that's what the reservoir sits on. And I did not order a new reservoir. I probably should have, and I'm hoping that doesn't come back to bite me in the ass here, but hopefully this other reservoir is good. It should be. I mean, I doubt that there's anything wrong with it, but I don't know. You never know until you get into it, I suppose. So I got under the bus here, and if you do not have a can of PB Blaster, I would highly recommend that you get a can or two, because, and I probably, if I were smart, I would have sprayed this master cylinder yesterday or a couple days ago, but I didn't, so I'm gonna do it now. So welcome to join along. It's gonna be under the bus. Watch your eyes on this. Probably should be wearing goggles, but I'm not. So I'm basically just gonna spray those two rusty nuts and make it a little easier for me to remove a little bit later. Yeah, you don't want to get this stuff in your eyes. Not good at all. Does not feel good. Okay, there we go. All right, so as I thought, I guess, first thing I'm going to do is we're going to pull these nuts off. They are 13s. I've already loosened them. They weren't too bad actually, but basically I'm going to pull these out. I'm not going to pull them all the way off right now because I want to focus on getting the hard lines loose first. That way I have some stability there. The hard lines are held in by an 11. So I started with this one over here and loosened. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's really tough to see, but the 11, get in there and start loosening those up. So I can't get a really good camera angle here, so I'm just going to take them off. Basically, again, we've got 2 13s and then 3 hard lines with an 11. Make sure lefty loosey, righty tighty, don't break these. You will be really upset with yourself if you break those. I promise. Been there, done that. So one there and one up here. So what I'm hoping here is that the only other thing I can see is, and again, the video lighting sucks in here, but there is a feeder line that feeds from the brake reservoir inside the cab of the bus that is held together with what looks to be just a flathead screw. So I'm going to loosen that and disconnect that reservoir. Now my reservoir is leaking, so I know there's no brake fluid in the reservoir up top. It's just a feeder, so I'm not too worried about it. As long as the main reservoir here isn't leaking, I should be good. So I'm hoping just by taking that flathead screwdriver and loosening that up, I should be able to disconnect the feeder tube, and then everything should slide back towards the back of the bus and out. But I'll let you know if I run into problems. You'll be the first to know. So I'm back, and we're just about ready to pull the master cylinder out. I'm going to show a couple things here. So you can see master cylinder is just kind of dangling there. The only thing holding it on right now is the filler tube, which, let me see if I can get a different light. Might be better on this side. Filler tube right here. But it's held on with a little flathead screwdriver, but it's really small. So I had to get a long flathead that was pretty thin to get in there and loosen that up. Now, I pulled the master cylinder out of its space here. I don't know what you want to call that, but basically out of the frame. And when I did that, I heard the reservoir inside the cab of the bus. I heard it pull out, so I'm gonna probably have to reattach that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna work on pulling this filler tube off. You can see this boot is completely tore up, and this is pretty rough shape. So I'm glad I'm replacing it. I don't know if I needed to or not, but I'm glad I am. So I'm gonna finish pulling this out, and we'll get things cleaned up in here and carry on. Well, I just learned something. Pulled the master cylinder out. Here it is. But look what's dripping. That filler hose that I told you about that didn't have any fluid in the reservoir, guess what? Full of fluid, and it almost went in my face. So note to self, be careful when you're pulling that out, because it does have fluid in there. It might be best to drain that fluid first. I didn't know that I had fluid in there. I thought it was empty, so it's my fault for not double checking. But the master cylinder is now out. I'm letting the reservoir drain, and I need to clean up my mess. So here's what we're looking at. This is the new one. Here's the old one. There's a part number there if you need to get a new reservoir. Mine looks pretty good. I'm gonna just pull it off, but look at the boot. Boot's trashed. This is just full of gunk and dirt and rust. I'm sure it's not helping my braking issues. I don't know how much it's hurting it, but so this should just pull right off. There is brake fluid in here, so I'm assuming I'm going to create a big mess here in a minute, but I'm going to drain this actually. Okay, so the reservoir came off. Here's the two, and not only did it come off, but it cleaned up really good too. Yeah, a little dirt in there, but This was a little tricky to get out, not gonna lie. I had to use a flathead screwdriver to kind of pry it out of these old gaskets. But these gaskets, when I got in there, they're starting to fail too. I mean, they've been in there for, I mean, this looks like the original master cylinder to me. So I'm assuming that you can see there, like it's basically falling apart there. So, you know, this gasket is the original gasket, I would imagine. And although I don't know that this is really truly the cause of my issue, I think I just have air in the brake lines. I feel safer driving this bus with a brand new master cylinder. And so I'm just gonna basically, this is gonna sit just like this right on top. And once I press that in there, it'll seat. I guess I'll need 2 hands to do it. So I'll just put that in there, and then we'll go back and we'll start to reinstall the new master cylinder and get all the brake lines tightened up, and then we'll start bleeding the brakes when I get a little help, and should be good to go. All right, so I'm back under the bus, and I got the new master cylinder back in. Everything was able to slide back in. So the master cylinder's in. I've got the filler tube, which you cannot see because there's terrible lighting. But the filler tube is reconnected, and now all I have to do is go and reattach all the hard lines back in. The hard lines moved when I took the old master cylinder out, so that might be a little tricky. But essentially what we need to do is we need to bend them back into place without breaking them. Cannot stress how much of a bad day that would make for me or you if you did that. You do not want to break those hard lines, because then you got a bigger project on your hands and you'll have to go through and re-hard line your bus, which doesn't sound like fun to me. So let's not do that. All right, I'm struggling with something, so I'm gonna let you guys take a peek at what I'm struggling with. So I am trying to realign the hard lines, and it is a royal pain in the ass. I don't know if the master cylinder is just slightly different, or if I bumped the hard lines as bad as it assumes that they have been bumped. But I'm having a hard time lining up the hard lines with the master cylinder to get them to lock in. I got one line done, so this side's done. I can't see that, but that hard line right there is finished and tightened down, so we're good there. But I'm struggling with the other two. So I took the stops sensor off so I could have a little bit more room to work with, and I kind of got this one lined up a little bit, but it's just off enough to where it won't thread. And then I got to do the same with this one, but this one is really like just not in the same angle as where it came off. So I don't know if maybe lightly tightening these before you put it back in, the master cylinder back in, and tighten it down with the 2 nuts and bolts here. Maybe that would have been a little bit easier, but that's where I'm at right now. So took that off. I'm gonna try and tighten it down, see if I have a little bit more space to work with. So stay tuned. So I'm keeping it real time. I ran into some problems. So I completely stripped down the master cylinder because I could not get one of the hard brake lines to thread. So here's where I'm at. Master cylinder is completely laid out and only holding in by the one. I don't know if you can see that, but it's only got the one hard line holding it in now. That was the one I couldn't get, and I finally got it threaded. So now I'm going to rethread these and put it all back together, so hopefully this will work better than what I've had luck with. So I don't know why these brake lines got all out of whack, but they did. So it's actually been a little easier for me to take the master cylinder out, rethread the hard brake lines, and then I'll stuff it all back in there hopefully when I'm done here. So we'll see how this finishes up is what I was really trying to say. So we'll see how it finishes up. Okay, we're all done. I learned some things. Funny when you go to record one of these videos and you've never done it before, and then you finish the project and say, I wish I would have recorded this a little differently or done the steps a little differently, but I didn't. So you can learn from my mistakes, but or you know what, there weren't even really mistakes, but just would have probably made this a little bit easier. So here's the finished project. Master cylinders replaced. The lighting is terrible. I'm super sorry about that, but finally got it all buttoned back up. Everything's good to go. So you're good to go there. Now, the removal part, removing it was the easy part. That was fine. I think those steps that I recorded ahead of time on removing the old master cylinder, not an issue. That was super easy. I think if I had done it again differently, I would have installed the master cylinder bare bones. So just take the master cylinder and then connect the hard lines just loosely enough just to get them started to thread, because that's where I ran into problems. Was I couldn't get the threads to lock into place on the new master cylinder. So I had to strip everything out and go one hard line at a time. I even removed both brake light switches and the reservoir and took it all the way completely out, just bare bones, and then started locking in just slightly one hard line at a time until I could have them at least threaded, like 2 or 3 threads on each hard line, because I was getting them hand tight and then they would pop loose. So if you tighten them down like 2 or 3 turns on the threads and then put the reservoir back on, stuff it all back up into position so that way all the brake lines move together, and then it came back and started tightening down these bolts and the whole thing moved into spot. So once this was all tightened down, then I can add my brake light switches back in and I can tighten those down super tight with it mounted into the frame of the bus. So I would have definitely done that a little bit differently, but it's done and I know for next time. So hope you found this helpful. If you did, give me a like, thumbs up. Those are good. Apparently in the YouTube world, thumbs ups are good. Make sure you subscribe, hit the little subscribe, whether it's down, over, left, up, right, I don't know where it's at yet, but hit that subscribe button and catch the next video when it's done. So thanks again for watching. Take care.